I was 12 years old when this happened, old enough to recognize danger, but still young enough to become the perfect target for the wrong kind of people. My neighborhood was usually quiet, sitting beside a dense forest preserve and a dark, swampy sump across the street. At the end of the trail through the woods was a small community park where a traveling carnival had set up for the weekend. That Saturday night, my mom casually suggested I go check it out since I had nothing else to do. She trusted me more than most parents trusted their kids. I was allowed to stay out after dark as long as I stayed careful. So, just after sunset, I grabbed my flashlight and headed into the woods alone. The deeper I walked into the forest, the colder the air became. Dead leaves crunched under my shoes, while tree branches creaked overhead like something breathing in the darkness. My flashlight beam bounced between the trees until colorful carnival lights finally appeared ahead through the fog. When I stepped out of the woods, the carnival looked strangely beautiful. A glowing Ferris wheel slowly rotated against the black sky. Rusty carnival rides groaned loudly. Music echoed through the chilly air while workers shouted at the remaining guests to play their games. The smell of popcorn, smoke, and damp grass mixed together in the night. But something about the place felt wrong. Near the center of the carnival stood a massive red and white circus tent. Curious, I walked closer and peeked inside. Only a few people sat in the audience. 3 clowns performed beneath flickering lights on a tiny stage. One rode a squeaking tricycle in circles. Another juggled bowling pins with unnatural speed. The third clown danced silently near the edge of the stage, his painted grin stretched too wide across his face. Then, suddenly, he stopped moving. Slowly, the clown turned his head toward me. Even from the entrance of the tent, I could feel his eyes locked onto mine. A strange chill crawled up my spine. Without saying a word, the clown lifted one finger and slowly motioned for me to come closer. I froze. The audience laughed at the performance, completely unaware that something about this clown felt deeply unsettling. His smile never changed. His eyes never blinked. He kept motioning for me to come forward. And that's when fear hit me for the first time that night.
Trying to shake off the uneasy feeling, I wandered deeper into the carnival crowd and eventually ran into one of my friends near the game booths. For the next half hour, everything almost felt normal again. We wasted money trying to win stuffed animals at rigged carnival games, laughed at the workers yelling for customers, and watched groups of teenagers stumble around the midway. The bright lights and loud music distracted me from the clown inside the tent, at least for a little while. But every now and then, I caught myself glancing over my shoulder. I couldn't explain it, but I felt like someone was watching me. As the night grew later, the carnival slowly began shutting down. Workers started powering off rides one by one, causing sections of the carnival to disappear into darkness. The cheerful music faded, families left, the parking lot emptied. Soon, only scattered groups of people remained. My friend headed home, and I turned toward the woods alone. The entrance to the forest trail sat near the back fence of the carnival grounds. Beyond it was nothing but darkness and trees. I had just reached the fence when I heard footsteps crunching behind me. Heading home already? My blood instantly turned cold. I slowly turned around. Standing only a few feet from me was the same clown from the circus tent. Up close, he looked even worse. His makeup was cracked and smeared, like it had been melting off his face for hours. Dark stains covered parts of his costume. His smile was painted wide across his face, but his real expression underneath looked completely emotionless. He tilted his head slightly. "You want to see something cool?" he asked softly.
I could show you backstage. There are things the guests don't get to see." The way he said it made my stomach tighten. I immediately shook my head. No. The clown's grin somehow seemed wider. "You sure?" he asked. I didn't answer. I turned around and quickly stepped through the opening in the fence, entering the woods. At first, I tried not to panic. I walked fast while shining my flashlight behind me every few seconds. The clown never followed. He simply stood near the fence, watching me disappear into the darkness. Completely still. That painted smile glowing faintly beneath the carnival lights. Once the carnival lights were no longer visible through the trees, fear completely took over me. I started running. Branches snapped beneath my shoes while my flashlight beam shook violently in my hand. Every shadow between the trees suddenly looked human. Every sound behind me made my heart slam harder against my chest. But eventually, everything became quiet again. Too quiet. I slowed down, breathing hard, trying to convince myself I was safe. That was my first mistake.
The forest had gone completely silent. No crickets, no wind, nothing. The only sound left was my own breathing and the crunch of leaves beneath my shoes. I was already more than halfway home by then. The road near my neighborhood couldn't have been far away. I kept telling myself the clown stayed back at the carnival. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe he was just trying to scare me. That's what I wanted to believe. Then I heard it. A faint laugh somewhere behind me. Not loud, not normal. A dry, wheezing little chuckle drifting through the trees. My entire body locked up. Slowly, I turned my flashlight toward the darkness behind me. At first, I saw nothing, except rows of trees and thick brush. Then the beam landed on a figure, standing between the trees, watching me. The clown. My heart nearly stopped. His white face seemed to glow in the darkness, while his filthy costume blended into the woods around him. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was just staring, completely motionless. For one horrifying second, neither of us moved. Then he stepped forward. The branches cracked beneath his feet as he slowly emerged from the darkness into the flashlight beam. I panicked. Without even thinking, I threw the flashlight directly at him. The lights spun through the air and smashed into his chest before falling into the leaves, leaving the woods almost completely dark. And then I ran, as hard as I possibly could. Tree branches whipped against my face while I sprinted blindly through the forest. My lungs burned instantly, but adrenaline kept my legs moving. Behind me, I could hear him crashing through the woods too. He was chasing me. I could hear footsteps getting closer, closer, closer. At one point, I swear I heard him laughing again. A horrible, choking laugh echoing through the trees behind me. I didn't dare look back. I knew if I fell, he would catch me. Finally, through the darkness ahead, I saw the faint glow of the road near my neighborhood. The moment the street became visible, the footsteps behind me suddenly stopped. Completely. I kept running until I burst out of the woods and onto my block. Only then did I risk looking back. The forest stood silent behind me. Empty. No clown. No movement. Nothing. But deep inside those trees, I could still feel him watching me. By the time I reached my house, I could barely breathe. My chest felt like it was on fire, and my legs shook so badly I almost collapsed on the front porch.
I slammed the door behind me and locked it as fast as I could. My mom immediately came out of the kitchen. She looked alarmed the second she saw me. My clothes were dirty from running through the woods, sweat dripped down my face, and I sounded like I had just escaped from something horrible. "What happened to you?" she asked. For a moment, I almost told her everything. The clown, the chase, the thing hiding in the woods. But fear stopped me. Not fear of the clown this time. Fear that my freedom would disappear. My mom always trusted me to go wherever I wanted at night. If I told her some terrifying clown chased me through the forest, she would never let me walk there alone again. So I lied. "I jogged home," I said between breaths. She looked suspicious, but eventually nodded and told me to calm down and drink some water. That night, I barely slept. Every tiny sound outside my bedroom window made me sit upright in panic. Tree branches scraping against the house sounded like fingers clawing at the walls. Several times, I thought I heard footsteps outside. At around 2 in the morning, I finally worked up the courage to look through my bedroom blinds. The street outside was empty, but across the road, near the edge of the woods, I thought I saw someone standing there, tall, still, watching the house. I shut the blinds immediately. From that night forward, my fear of clowns became something far worse than a normal childhood phobia. Before then, clowns only made me uncomfortable. After that night, even seeing a clown on television made my stomach twist with fear. For nearly 2 years, I avoided carnivals completely. I refused to go near circuses, and I never walked through those woods after dark again. But when I turned 14, something happened that made me realize the nightmare might not have ended at all. After that day, I started pulling away from him. Not suddenly, just enough to create distance. Life made it easier. We got different jobs, stopped seeing each other as often, and eventually, we drifted apart. For a while, I convinced myself it was over, that whatever darkness I had seen in him was just something I got away from. Until, one night, I saw him again. It was at a party, and just like before, he fit right in. Laughing, social, completely normal. Everyone loved him. No one had any idea. When he came up to talk to me, it felt like nothing had ever happened. He was calm, friendly, almost reassuring. For a moment, I actually thought he had changed, that maybe I had overreacted. But then, he told me something that sent a chill straight through me. He had joined the police. He was officially part of the local department. The same person who casually talked about torture, about control, about violence, now had authority, a badge, power over people, and somehow no one saw a problem with that. We started talking again after that, carefully, spending time together here and there, and once again he seemed completely normal, too normal, until small cracks started to show again. He talked about his cousin's death with no emotion at all, no sadness, no grief, just facts, cold and distant. Then there was his girlfriend. The way he spoke about her felt detached, like she was just another object in his life, something disposable. And then came the things he admitted almost casually. He told me that when he was younger, he had abused his own dog, killed other animals, like it was nothing. Recently, he even bragged about kidnapping a sex worker, just to scare her. But when I asked what he meant by scare, he shut down instantly. Got defensive, hostile. That was new, because this was someone who usually loved going into detail, which means whatever actually happened,
It was worse than what he was willing to say. And then came the night that confirmed everything. New Year's. We were at a bar when a fight broke out. At first, it seemed minor, until he lost control. He attacked a man and didn't stop. Punch after punch, even after the guy was on the ground, even after he started choking in his own blood. I tried to pull him away, but he was too strong. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered to him in that moment. The only thing that stopped him was me shouting that the man could die. And then he just stopped, turned around, looked at me with a completely blank expression, and calmly went back to what he was doing before, like nothing had happened. That's when I knew this wasn't just someone with dark thoughts. This was someone capable of acting on them. I reported him, anonymously, but nothing came of it. No investigation, no consequences. So now we're doing the only thing we can, watching him, documenting everything. Because if we're right, this isn't just a suspicion anymore. It's a warning.
At the time this happened, I was 14 years old and living in a tiny rural town in South Carolina with barely over 100 residents. Nothing dangerous ever happened there. Everyone knew each other. Most people left their doors unlocked at night. The roads were empty after sunset, and the forests surrounding the town felt endless. That summer, I got a job working at the local lumber yard. It was exhausting work. Every day, I loaded heavy boards into trucks, stacked lumber beneath the burning sun, and cleaned the yard until closing time. But I enjoyed it because it kept me busy, and the paycheck was good for someone my age. The best part was that my house sat exactly 1 mile away from work, so I walked there and back every day. The road connecting the lumberyard to my home cut straight through isolated woods and rolling hills. No sidewalks, no streetlights, no nearby houses for miles. Just forest and silence. Most nights, I listened to music through my earbuds while walking home. It made the long, dark road feel less lonely. One evening near the end of summer, I clocked out around 9:30 p.m. and started the usual walk home. The sun had completely disappeared behind the hills, leaving only pale moonlight shining across the pavement. Fog drifted low along the ground, while frogs and crickets screamed from the woods on both sides of the road. About halfway home, I suddenly heard something strange through my music. A laugh. High-pitched, sharp, almost childlike. But there was something deeply wrong about it. I stopped walking immediately and pulled one earbud out. The road became silent except for insects croaking from the trees. I stood there staring into the darkness, trying to figure out where the sound came from. Nothing moved. No cars, no animals, no people. After another minute, I convinced myself I imagined it. Maybe it came from the song I was listening to. So I shrugged it off and continued walking home. But for the rest of the night, I couldn't stop thinking about that laugh. The next afternoon, I began my walk back to work around 1:30 p.m. like always. Bright sunlight poured through the trees, making the road feel completely harmless compared to the night before. I kicked small rocks along the fresh pavement to pass the time. Then, one of the rocks bounced into the dirt near the edge of the road and struck something bright red. At first, I thought it was a toy ball. Curious, I walked over and picked it up. The moment I squeezed it, it let out a loud squeak. I froze. It was a clown nose, a dirty red rubber clown nose lying beside the woods in the middle of nowhere. A strange chill crept through my body. because suddenly, that terrifying laugh from the night before no longer felt imaginary.
I stood there for a moment, holding the clown nose in my hand, staring at the dark tree line beside the road. Something about it felt wrong. Not just strange, wrong. The rubber was old and dirty, covered in mud and dead grass, as if it had been lying there for days. Yet somehow it looked freshly dropped at the same time, almost like someone wanted it to be found. I looked around carefully. The woods were completely still. No movement, no sound except wind brushing through the leaves overhead. Finally, I shoved the clown nose into my pocket and continued walking to work, trying not to overthink it. When I arrived at the lumberyard, I showed it to a few coworkers. Most of them laughed. One guy jokingly honked it and said, "Looks like Pennywise lost his job out here." Everyone found it funny except me. For some reason, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling growing inside my chest. The rest of the shift dragged on slowly. As evening approached, dark storm clouds rolled over the hills, blocking most of the moonlight. By the time I clocked out at 9:30 p.m., the road outside looked far darker than usual. And to make things worse, I had forgotten my earbuds at home. That meant no music during the walk back, just silence. I slipped my hands into my hoodie pocket and started down the empty road. The air felt unusually cold. Fog crept low across the pavement while distant thunder rumbled somewhere beyond the hills. Without music distracting me, every tiny sound from the woods seemed amplified. Twigs snapping, leaves rustling, branches creaking. About halfway home, I noticed something standing far ahead in the road. At first, I assumed it was a deer. The figure stood motionless about 150 yards away, barely visible through the fog. Moonlight outlined its shape while the rest blended into darkness. As I slowly approached, the figure suddenly darted off the road and disappeared into the woods. I exhaled nervously. "Just a deer," I whispered to myself. But something about the way it moved didn't feel natural. It looked too tall, too fast. I kept walking. Then, a few moments later, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, heavy, crunching against the pavement. At first, I thought the deer had somehow circled back onto the road, but deep down, I already knew that wasn't possible. The footsteps were human, and they were getting closer. The footsteps continued behind me, slow, uneven, almost dragging across the pavement. Every instinct in my body screamed at me not to turn around, but I couldn't help it anymore. I slowly looked back over my shoulder. At first, all I saw was fog drifting across the road beneath the pale moonlight. Then, a figure emerged from the darkness. A clown, standing in the center of the road. My heart instantly dropped into my stomach. He looked filthy. His oversized clown costume hung loosely from his body, stained with dirt and dark marks I didn't want to identify. The bright colors had faded into sick-looking shades under the moonlight. His makeup had melted down his face like tears, but his eyes were completely black. The clown tilted his head sideways and smiled. "Hey there," he said softly. His voice sounded dry and scratchy, almost like he hadn't spoken in years. I took a shaky step backward. The clown slowly raised one hand from behind his back. "You have something that belongs to me," he said. A horrible realization hit me instantly. The clown nose. My pulse began hammering violently. I don't know what you're talking about," I stammered. The clown let out a quiet giggle. Then he whispered, "If you don't have my nose," he slowly pulled the other hand from behind his back, "then I guess I'll have to take yours." Moonlight reflected off the blade of what looked like a machete, then another. He had two of them. For one frozen second, I couldn't breathe. The clown suddenly took a step toward me. That was enough. I turned and sprinted down the road with every ounce of strength I had. Behind me, I heard the sound of bare feet slapping violently across the pavement. He was chasing me. Fast. Way too fast. The metal blades scraped across the asphalt behind him, creating a horrifying screeching sound that echoed through the empty road. I pushed myself harder than I ever had before. My lungs burned instantly, my vision blurred, but the footsteps behind me kept getting closer. 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 Then I heard it again, that awful laugh, high-pitched, breathless, completely insane. The clown giggled while chasing me through the darkness. I could almost feel him reaching for me. At one point, the scraping blades sounded only a few feet behind my back. I honestly believed I was about to die on that road. Then suddenly, bright headlights exploded over the hill ahead. A truck appeared, and everything changed.
The truck's headlights flooded the road in front of me with blinding white light. I waved my arms wildly and screamed for help while stumbling toward it. The driver slammed on the brakes. Tires screeched against the pavement as the truck stopped only a few feet away from me. I nearly collapsed beside the driver's door, gasping for air. "Please," I shouted, "there's someone chasing me." The driver, an older man wearing a hunting jacket, immediately looked past me down the road. I turned around too, and my blood ran cold. The road behind us was empty, completely empty. No clown, no footsteps, no sound, nothing, except fog drifting silently across the pavement. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then, the man opened his truck door and stepped out carefully, scanning the woods with a flashlight he kept beside his seat. "You sure somebody was after you?" he asked cautiously. "I swear to God," I said between breaths. "He had machetes. He was right behind me." The man looked unsettled now. Maybe it was the terror in my voice, or maybe he sensed something was wrong too. He told me to get inside the truck while he called the police. I climbed into the passenger seat, still shaking uncontrollably. As the man spoke to the dispatcher, I stared through the windshield toward the dark road behind us. That's when I noticed something horrifying. Near the edge of the woods, far beyond the truck's headlights, a figure stood between the trees, perfectly still, watching us. The clown. Only part of his face was visible through the darkness, but I could still make out the white makeup and that twisted smile. I froze in terror. Before I could say anything, the figure slowly stepped backward into the woods and disappeared completely. The police arrived about 15 minutes later and searched the area with flashlights. They found nothing. No footprints, no weapons, no sign that anyone had been there at all. One officer even suggested maybe I imagined it after being alone on the road at night. But I knew what I saw. And deep down, I knew the clown had been watching me long before he revealed himself on that road. After that night, I refused to walk home the same way again. The police eventually left, telling me to be more careful about walking alone so late. They treated it like a possible prank, or maybe stress mixed with exhaustion after work. But I knew what I saw, and I knew what chased me. For the next few days, everything felt normal again. I kept working at the lumber yard, but I always made sure to leave earlier so I wouldn't be walking in complete darkness.
Still, something inside me never settled. I kept thinking about that clown nose. I had left it at work on a shelf near my station. One afternoon, I went to grab it just to throw it away, but it was gone. I asked around. No one had seen it. No one had moved it. It was just missing. That was the moment I stopped laughing it off. About a week later, I started hearing things again on the walk home. Sometimes a faint giggle carried through the wind. Sometimes footsteps would appear far behind me, only to disappear when I stopped and turned around. And once, I saw something standing at the top of a hill on the road, a tall silhouette, watching me. When I blinked, it was gone. I never told anyone else, not because I didn't want to, but because nobody believed me the first time, and I wasn't sure I wanted to hear their explanation again. Months passed. The feeling slowly faded, but never fully disappeared. Even now, I still avoid walking that road at night, because every so often, when the wind is just right, I swear I can hear that same high-pitched laugh echoing somewhere deep in the trees. And I always wonder the same thing. Did it ever leave that road? Or was it just waiting for me to forget, so it could come back closer? I used to think my neighborhood was safe. Nothing ever happened there. It was the kind of place where kids rode bikes until sunset, and parents didn't worry about locking every door. That changed one quiet Tuesday night. My parents were out of town, and my brother and sister were both gone for the evening. A friend of mine, B, came over so we could walk to a small local fair a few blocks away. It was supposed to be a normal night. We walked through quiet residential streets under dim streetlights, joking around like nothing mattered. The fair was set up in an empty parking lot. Small rides, cheap games, almost no crowd. We walked around for a while, laughing, playing games, and acting like normal kids. Then we saw him, a clown standing near one of the game booths. He didn't say anything, he just smiled, but something about him felt off immediately. He moved slowly, too slowly, like every step was intentional. His painted face looked cracked under the harsh lights, and his expression never changed. No blinking, no speaking, just watching. We tried to ignore him and walked away. B laughed it off, saying, "That guy's creepy as hell." I agreed, but I didn't stop looking over my shoulder. And that's when I realized he was still following us. Not running, not rushing, just staying behind us at a distance we couldn't measure, and slowly closing it. We tried to act normal, but neither of us was really enjoying the fair anymore. Every few minutes, I felt that uncomfortable pressure in the back of my mind, the feeling that someone was still watching us, even when we weren't looking. B noticed it too. "Okay, that guy is still here," he muttered, trying to sound calm. We turned slightly without fully stopping. The clown was no longer near the game booths, but now he was closer, standing between two food stalls, just staring, not moving, not reacting, like he had been placed there specifically to track us. We decided to leave, quickly. The fair suddenly felt smaller, darker, and more closed in than before. The laughter and music from the crowd didn't feel normal anymore. It felt distant, almost fake. As we stepped out of the parking lot and onto the quiet neighborhood road, the air changed instantly. No music, no crowd, just silence and streetlights buzzing overhead. For a moment, it felt like we were safe again. But that feeling didn't last long. The moment we turned onto the sidewalk, we heard footsteps behind us. We both stopped. So did the footsteps. We started walking again. So did they. B looked at me with wide eyes. "Tell me you hear that." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. We both knew. Someone was following us. We turned sharply. The street behind us was empty, but I didn't feel relieved because I had learned something important that night. Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not there. And when we finally reached the front of my house, I realized something even worse. The clown was no longer behind us. He was closer than that. He was already there, somewhere nearby, hiding.
We stopped right in front of my house. The porch light buzzed softly above us, casting a weak yellow glow over the driveway. For a second, everything felt almost normal again. B was breathing heavily. I was trying to unlock the door with shaking hands. That's when I felt it. That strange, heavy silence behind us. Not the normal nighttime silence. Something deeper, like the world had paused. B suddenly grabbed my arm. "Turn around," he whispered. I didn't want to, but I did. The street behind us was empty. Too empty. No cars, no movement, no wind in the trees. Just the neighbors' dark bushes across the yard. And then I saw it. A shape, barely visible, hidden inside the bushes next door. A clown, watching us, completely still. My stomach dropped instantly. He wasn't on the sidewalk. He wasn't far away. He was right there, just a few feet from my house, crouched low like he had been waiting for us the entire time. The moment he realized we saw him, he slowly stood up. No sudden movement, no rush, just slow, deliberate rising from the bushes. Then he stepped out into the driveway light and started walking toward us. B panicked immediately. "Go, go, go!" My hands fumbled the keys. One slipped, then another. My heart was beating so fast I could barely think. The clown kept walking, slow, unstoppable. I finally got the door open and we rushed inside, slamming it shut behind us. I locked it immediately, then the chain, then the bolt. B was already running toward the hallway. "Upstairs, now!" We didn't waste time. We sprinted up the stairs and went straight into my little brother's room, the only window facing the front yard. B pulled the blinds just slightly, and we looked out. The clown was standing in the middle of my driveway, looking directly up at the house, right at us. Even from upstairs, I could see his face clearly enough to know he wasn't smiling like before. This time, his expression felt patient, like he wasn't surprised we ran, like he expected it. Then he tilted his head slightly and smiled again. But it wasn't playful anymore. It was something else, something patient and knowing. We dropped down instantly, hiding under the window. Neither of us spoke. We just listened, waiting for what felt like forever. And then we heard something outside the house that made my blood run cold. A soft knock on the front door. The knock came again, soft, careful, almost polite. But it didn't belong there, not at that hour, not after what we had just seen standing in the driveway. B and I stayed completely still under the window,
barely breathing. Then the knock stopped. Silence returned. For a moment, we thought maybe he had left. Maybe he was gone like before. Then the porch light outside flickered once, twice, and went steady again. That's when I heard footsteps on the front steps, slow, deliberate, moving closer to the door. B whispered, "He's still here." I didn't answer. My entire body felt frozen. The doorknob suddenly rattled. Once, then again. Not a forceful break-in, but testing it, like he was checking if we were smart enough to lock it properly. I heard a faint, low giggle outside. Very quiet, right against the door. Then a voice followed. "Come on, I know you're home." B grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. We both crawled further away from the window, staying low. Another pause, then the knocking stopped completely. For about 10 seconds, everything was silent again. Too silent. Then we heard something that made my stomach drop even lower. Scratching. Not at the door, at the side of the house. Slow, dragging sounds moving along the exterior wall, like something was circling the house. B mouthed, "He's walking around." We didn't move, we just listened. The scratching continued for several seconds, moving from the front of the house toward the side yard. Then it stopped again. Nothing. No footsteps. No sound. Just silence. I slowly crawled toward the window again and carefully peeked out. The driveway was empty. The street was empty. No clown. No movement. B let out a shaky breath. Maybe he left. But I didn't feel relief, because I had seen this before. They don't always disappear. Sometimes they just wait where you can't see them. And that night, I had the feeling he wasn't gone at all. He was just out of sight, waiting for us to make a mistake. And then, from somewhere inside the house, we heard a floorboard creak downstairs.
The floorboard creak downstairs didn't feel like the house settling. It was deliberate, slow, like someone had stepped inside and was trying to decide where to go next. B and I locked eyes immediately. Neither of us spoke. We both knew what it meant. The clown wasn't outside anymore. Or worse, he had been inside the entire time. Another creak followed, then another, moving across the lower floor. B whispered, "How did he get in?" I didn't have an answer. All I could think about was the front door. I was sure I had locked it. I remembered the chain, the bolt, everything. But now it didn't matter. We needed to move. Slowly, we crawled toward the bedroom door, careful not to make any sound. Every movement felt like it echoed through the entire house. Downstairs, something shifted again, a faint dragging sound, like fabric brushing against wood. Then it stopped. Silence returned once more. Too clean, too controlled. We reached the hallway and began inching toward the stairs. That's when B suddenly froze. He grabbed my arm and pointed. At the top of the staircase wall, just barely visible in the dim light, there was something. A shadow. Long, still, standing at the bottom of the stairs, looking up. The clown. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't climbing. He was just standing there, as if he had already known exactly where we would end up. For a few seconds, none of us moved. Not him, not us. Then he slowly tilted his head upward and smiled. B backed up instantly, shaking. "Nope, no, no, no." We turned and ran, back into the bedroom, slamming the door behind us. I pushed a chair under the handle while B grabbed anything he could find, lamp, backpack, anything that could block the door. Footsteps started again outside, closer this time, stopping right in front of the room. A soft knock followed, not loud, almost gentle. Then a voice came through the door again, calm, low. "You can't hide in there forever." The handle slowly began to turn. B and I backed away toward the window, trapped. The door started to push inward slightly. The chair scraped against the floor, and just as the door gave way another inch, everything stopped. No movement, no sound, complete silence. Then, suddenly, the house lights flickered violently once and went out. Darkness swallowed everything. B whispered, terrified, "What now?" I didn't answer, because in that exact moment, from outside the window behind us, I heard a faint giggle right next to the glass.